Morning. Today is Saturday. It is at some point after, I want to say that it is it's actually the 9th of March, and I am in the Northern Vigilance area, Northeastern Local Vigilance area. That's the one. And apparently not totally caffeinated yet, but I am here to do a general pattern sweep. There's an interesting wailing noise in the background that could be any one of a number of things, but I'll listen in to see if it's anything more interesting than what I think it is right now. And it's going to be one of those weekends where I really don't have a whole lot of an agenda. I have more of my mind on things that I have to do coming up and things that I have in the works for a project coming up. I started mentioning it last week. I'll get deeper into it because I've actually started assembling the materials for it, and we'll get into that as well. But we're going to take a look and see what's going on. We're almost to the point where it's warm enough and consistently not snowy enough to head north again. So that's in the near future, in the next month or so. So we're going to be doing that too. But let's get into it. Let's go and hit this area and see what's going on and see if there's anything to report from here today. And we'll take it from there. Thanks. We're back and took a second to shot some video of what looks to be, you can barely see them, so I'm not going to bother. This thing has no zoom, so I'm not going to bother trying to get them on the camera. But they, basically a family of Canadian geese with some new goslings. So it was just kind of like a nice peaceful shot for a change of scenes, should I choose to use it in the video. Transition, that's the word I was looking for. Nice peaceful little scenes like that to either do an outro, intro, or transition between scenes. I like those kinds of things. I noticed that some people that have Bigfoot related channels on YouTube like to go with a big scary hyper dramatic route. I don't really see the subject that way. I'd rather just present 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see anything out here of that nature. And you're just out here in the peace and tranquility that is this place. And, for all the people that, I haven't gotten chided that much for bushwhacking as a rule. And I mean, anyone that watches my material on any regular basis will admit that I'm not the type to adhere blindly to a trail. I just don't do that as much as some. But regarding what I have to talk about today, first of all, I did actually see bits of an episode of the YouTube podcast, I'll call it that, YouTube podcast that I had been invited to indirectly by an associate of the host with no confirmation the host had ever made that invitation. Therefore, I will forego the opportunity. That being said, again, I think I got into this last week in greater detail. I am, far as I know, not on the best terms with this individual, and therefore I don't find the invite to be credible. I'm not accusing the host of anything because it didn't come from him, far as I know. I think it was an impetuous thought made by the person who who probably had good intentions, but doesn't want to understand that history can have some firm roots in some places, and the individual who made the invite did tell me that the host had actually apologized to him for past indiscretions, which in my opinion were actually pretty grievous. But I have had no such contact with this person. In fact, I've had no contact with them in 12, 13 years, and I don't really see any reason to pursue any. Lovely poop pile. Anyway. So from that regard, I do not foresee a time anytime soon where I'll be on this podcast. But so if you go to the channel, you'll notice that a lot of the stuff right up until this last week is basically clip show bait, basically, because he is, I guess, trying to build up a presence before he goes live to get viewership, which I guess is something you might expect somebody who is of a media mindset going to do. But I saw the current episode, bits and pieces, and although his guest is somebody I am on good terms with and I do like enough, the content covered was a lot of the same old that's been out there forever and a day. And I see a guy who got old and basically wants to talk about it but not go out and do it anymore, which is much of what happened to the group I was with by way of NESRA, the Northeastern Sasquatch Researchers Association. I guess they just decided it was funner to do it from the armchair over time, but I would beg to differ, and as long as I'm able to get out here, that's the way I'm going to do it. So I may never solve it, but I wouldn't be alone in that claim, so I guess that's okay. Interestingly enough, there's a massive burl over there. I'm assuming you can see that relatively well from here. And for those who don't know what a burl is from a forestry standpoint, it's unfortunately a tree that has a big cancerous, the equivalent of a cancerous growth for a tree. And that's a big one. There's one right behind it over there, if you can see that as well. This is a gnarly stretch of woods, but it's what makes it an interesting area too. So I saw the show. It was a guy, in my opinion, and maybe he'll prove me wrong over time, but he is talking to his old friends, and maybe that's just the way of getting his feet wet again. I don't know. That's all I'm going to really say about it. I'm not going to offer it any harsh criticism or any heaping loads of praise, because as of right now, it was basically him and Sean Forker talking about the old days. Nothing against Sean, because I like Sean. The other gentleman, I'm not going to even mention name, because the last time we had any communication, he started threatening litigation if anyone mentioned him, and he at that time was not the person that I thought I had known.
Camera capacity, I don't know if the audio is going to be as good or not, because it's in a plastic case. The last time we tried to record with this, it muffled the audio. We'll hope not. This is a case of like literally improvising in the field when something went awry. Let's move on and cover other things, because I think I gave too much airtime to the host of the podcast anyway. Basically, he seems like he's trying to either build hype by going over the old days, but it's going to come down to, or at least for me, what are you doing lately? What's the new stuff? Because, yeah, you're not the person I thought you were back then. And if you're trying to come back into it, and you're seemingly still with the same old friends that caused controversy with me in the first place, I got other things to do. Like be out here. Now, I had hinted at things coming up. So last week I had started talking about doing a research project, opening up a new long-term research project pertaining to infrasound sources in the woods, since I've had a couple of weird encounters with that kind of thing. And I am building for lack of a better word, a infrasonic recording base station, where I have the means right now to do passive recording for it when I have encountered the odd pulsing sound. I've heard a derivative of it this year. It wasn't exactly the same, I don't think, of last year, but it has happened more than once, which means it's a repeatable phenomenon, and therefore invites some scientific inquiry. So there's that. And that's going to involve some infrasonic recording. I'm trying to find either like a frequency tone generator or something, and I have some plans in my head for a makeshift Yagi antenna that I'll MacGyver together, mainly to save on budget, and see if I can do that, open up some kind of a form of infrasonic call blasting to see if I can initiate a response in the company of whatever was making the sound. Because to this day, it's happened twice, and I'll be darned if I can tell you what the hell the source was. That is one of this stretch of woods little mysteries. But on two different occasions, over in that generation, in that direction rather, the source of the sound based on known science being that sound waves in general cover roughly 300 meters per second. It was probably about 900 meters out, or about a kilometer from here. I have looked in that direction, and there's no definitive, obvious source for such things, but the mystery continues, so to speak, and so does the inquiry into what the hell it is, because I want to know. So that's one thing. I'll be going back north in the next few weeks. I have some business locally to handle first, but I will be going that way in the next few weeks. And when I get back up there, I'll get a lay of the land again, kind of like I do most years. I've been up that way, and I will get a plan going with that, with the long-term research project. I've had some infrasonic hits up there too, but that's not the sole basis of my basis of study. Obviously, I'm still looking for the creature itself, and up there we did have interactions with a family group for a couple of years before they apparently have moved on. So there is that. I will continue that as well. Try to figure out a way to more accurately cover some things. I had mentioned also the use of like LoRaWAN technology, which is a long distance frequency radio. And with some electronic components, there is a way. I know there are infrared lenses for the camera modules that you can cobble together with a Raspberry Pi. In addition to, there's one version at least that has a thermal image. I don't know how good or how far it extends, but I know how to wire the transceiver from the LoRaWAN thing to the camera. If there's a way to have connectivity to at least monitor the uptime of the cameras over a distance of, I think they said on average line of sight allows for 2 to 3 kilometers, maybe up to 5. That gives you a decent spread of these little cameras you put around a given area, where you can cover that over the course of however long you can figure out how to power the thing, which is either a battery bank or like a power brick, or some kind of solar setup possibly, or I mean, they run on 5 volts, so I don't know if you can get away with a 9-volt battery without some kind of a inverter, which adds to the bulk of the setup. But if you can figure out a 5-volt situation with low voltage, then they have these USB compatible battery packs with a couple of at least AAA batteries, which you keep you running for at least in the summer because it's not too cold. Probably get that going for at least a couple of days, if not a week. Field testing would be once I build 1 or 2 of them for at least proof of concept. So, I know there are people out there, I'm not going to name names, they're like, well, get rid of all the cameras. Fuck you, shut up. Because everybody who discourages the use of cameras are the same very people that cling to the woo. And in the course of clinging to the woo, they have no proof to back up their more, shall we say, esoteric theories as to the nature of the creature and the mystery that surrounds it. And I am more than happy to change my point of view, as I've said on previous occasions, if you can pony up some proof that would lead me in that direction. In the time I've been out here doing this, which is more than a little bit of time, I have not been led in that direction, although there is some accompanying weirdness to the subject that could be taken in that context if you don't apply critical thinking, which you should. And I know that's the bane of the woo, but it ain't going anywhere, folks, and you're always going to have, even if we're in the minority in the community, there's going to be those, like myself, that are going to be the asshole that picks apart the logical flaws in the movie, so to speak, conceptually. Because that's just what the bleep we do. Get over it. We're not going anywhere. When you have people pushing Zorth and all this other nonsense, we're going to be there. There's nothing you can do to make us go away. All the Mark Zasky related freaking DMCA strike bullshit things on YouTube. Unfortunately for you and people like you, my channel's not monetized, which makes it a whole lot more impervious to that kind of shit. Enough politics and Bigfoot. When I get up there, I'm also going to be taking this year. I want to take a more holistic approach to the pursuit of this. And what I mean by that is, this is one of those things where I call it like the maturity of a researcher in the subject. And what I mean by that is, when you first start out, you want to try everything, you want to do everything, you look up everything you can, and you come into bad habits. And like by bad habits, I mean call blasting possibly, but like wood knocking. Wood knocking, historically, like it or not, the inconvenient truth of it is the invention of Matthew Moneymaker, who founded the BFRO. And I have never seen anyone with a photo, even a blurry one that's doctored, of a big hairy creature whacking on a tree with a stick. And although I have heard what could be described as wood knocks in the woods myself, I also have heard a whole lot of things that could easily be mistaken, from wood pops in the middle of a really cold winter day to hiking in the general vicinity. And by general vicinity, I mean you can hear gunshots off in the distance, where I can probably name the type of gunshot or the type of firearm doing the shooting by the nature of the noise and the cadence of the gunshot. But these all, to the untrained ear, suddenly potentially become wood knocks. I've literally stood within a distance from me to that tree and heard a wood pop and stood there, and you notice there's no monkey person there whacking on a tree with a stick. I'm just saying, these are things that are completely unproven, and they're as hypothetical as any woo theory out there. It may have more scientific plausibility, and I, at the moment, again, delving into the subject of infrasound as much as I intend to. Yes, it sounds woo-like, but as I said last week, there's a plausibility on a scientific basis because you have mammals within the animal kingdom known to have like abilities to manipulate sound in some way, shape, or form that is above and beyond the need for either normal sight or hearing. So it's an extrasensory perception or ability in that sense. A bat is a land-based mammal that can use sound to echolocate its prey. And that is a mammal that, on a genetic basis, if you take by contrast the genetics of a human to, say, a garden slug, a bat's a whole lot more genetically similar to a person in that it's a mammal. And like it or not, humans, if you're not like some person who denies science and evolution and all that, you don't like it or not, way back when all mammals began from rodents, which bats are. So there is a common ground. And that being said, they can do that, and yet the myth is they're blind. No, they're not. Bats see just fine. They hear just fine, too. And yet they have this weird little sensory organ in their head that lets them freaking echolocate prey, which means they have an extra ability. To say nothing of dolphins and whales that have the same thing. They can see fine, they can probably hear fine, but by the same token, they communicate and do all kinds of crazy shit because the water facilitates sound being manipulated like that. That's the one wooish thing I will defend, but I do notice on a scientific basis. That being said, getting back to the maturity of a Bigfooter, this is kind of a philosophical discussion. I'm not going to call this one quite a rant. As you have things happen and you learn how to potentially react to them, you learn to just blend into the forest and do other things that don't make it obvious you're trying to have contact with these creatures. You go out and you go fishing, you go hunting, you go hiking, and you do the other activities you normally might do out there. You camp out with the family or something. And you potentially generate a source of curiosity for them to come in, and you have passive recording equipment available, as well as some means of recording should you come across weirdness in the course of, in the case of a couple of weeks down here, turkey hunting up north. Turkey hunting, because Vermont doesn't have a grouse season in the spring for whatever reason. Probably because it's mating season and there's some legality to that. Conjecture on my part, but I do know they don't have a season for grouse up there. But that being said, it puts you out in the middle of nowhere with a different focus. But you're still out there, and you should still have your peripheral knowledge or your peripheral vision, as my linguistic skills are sucking today. Looking for such things. So I'm going to take a segment break at this point, having made the larger parts of my talking points here today, because this camera is an improvisation again, and I don't know for sure how long it's going to last. It's not crazy cold, but cold enough that it might have a drain on the battery. So rather than have another awkward cutting off in the middle of mid-sentence, I'm going to take a segment break, and we'll come back in a minute. All right, we're back to do a basic wrap-up. It's a quiet day here. There's no background noise. It's not as windy as I thought. I had given thought to putting the drone up, but you do have periodic and apparently increasing winds throughout the day, and the gusts come up, and that's where a drone will come into problems. If you have it like 100, 200 feet up and you suddenly encounter 35 mile an hour winds, and what's going on down here is not necessarily what's going on north of 100 feet in the air. So, that is the case. And I'm going to add this to my repertoire of cameras because I had forgotten I had the GoPro in my pack, and I can put that on my little talking stick, as I call it. Basically, it turns into a video microphone, so we'll do that. But previous subject matter has left me with a thought like there really should be a study, like a psychological study of the kind of personality types that make up the Bigfoot community. I do think that would be a fascinating thing. And like the number of malignant narcissists that there are in the community, and the number of people that are just wishful thinking types that just want to believe a certain thing without having any need to any burden of proof to back up the belief. That kind of thing. Because, and I do understand that's going to burn a lot of insecurity too, because these are the very kinds of people that don't like to be challenged in their beliefs. A malignant narcissist, in that malignant narcissist's mind, is never wrong, and you become Satan when you try to suggest otherwise. Been there, done that, dealt with that kind of person, and there are specific toxic individuals in the community who can basically, for lack of a better word, ingest a satchel of Richards and leave me alone forevermore, because I have no interest in interacting with you ever again, because you just are that toxic. Number one. Number two, the wishful thinking people are going to, and you encounter these people on Facebook like literally every other day. I ran into one Thursday, and it was a matter where the stick structure thing came up yet again. I'm going to cover that on the way out, and if the camera dies on me, so be it. It's a subject that's been beaten to death. But that's the peeve. It's like, what people don't realize about stick structures is this is something that, again, like wood knocking, somehow was invented in the imagination of somebody along the way on the internet, and due to copycatism, has become part of accepted Bigfoot canon, for lack of a better word. And it has no basis in proof. I have never seen a single convincing bit of evidence where you have a large, hairy forest creature stacking sticks and doing stick art. I never have. And yet Chris Noel, among others, my most popular subject of criticism, has a book out there that's like 106 pages long with every conceivable bit of deadfall, with descriptions on it in a book, somewhere out on Amazon if you want to waste your money. As much as I criticize the guy, I just plugged his book, so don't say I'm not fair. The guy doesn't make any effort to conjecture on what the actual wood glyphs, as he calls them in some cases, what they mean. And the reason why is because he doesn't know, because he's basically making stuff up. And that's the thing about the whole stick structure argument is there's literally no proof to back it up as a theory. It's something that is just another attempt at lazy, sloppy logic where you have people coming upon something like this, which is nothing more than literally 3 sticks that fell on the ground on top of each other due to any one of a number of potential circumstances. and have been here for some time, such that you have mushrooms growing on them over there. And there's nothing to back up the notion that this is anything that Bigfoot does or doesn't do. First, you prove the creature's out there. That's job one. Let me do a slight adjustment on the camera. Number two, then you actually have to see one doing this, and then you can kind of conjecture what the hell he's doing and why he does this. Because until you can do that, you're making stuff up. And the more stuff that gets made up, as I beat the dead horse that doesn't whinny anymore, the more white noise you're generating and the more static you're generating that doesn't get this thing solved. And you make yourself part of the problem. That is the poison that is the woo. You have every right to your belief system, but if you have no proof, that's all it is. And ironically, the person that I got into it with on Thursday briefly, but that was her defense. Well, you can't prove it either, so it's an opinion. Right. But they were the one that chimed in when I offered my opinion on stick structures, and what I said was, it is a bit of sloppy logic and wishful thinking, with no proof to back it up, when what I did do was offer alternatives to things like this. With a tree that big, you are in an area where historically you have strong winds that are routinely north of 40 miles an hour throughout 3 to 4 seasons of the year on a regular basis. So you're going to have trees get blown over. You have trees that are half dead inside, and why would they be half dead inside, even if they look normal? Connecticut and a lot of New England and probably other regions nearby have been subjected to invasions by invasive species of wood-boring insects, and what they do is they'll get into a tree like this, and they're not eating the outside, the bark and all that. They're eating the pulp on the middle and the inside where the sap flows, and that is one of the fastest ways to kill a tree that otherwise looks normal on the outside. But what it does is it hollows out the inside, and you hit it with a strong wind, and yes, even a healthy-looking tree can come down, and that does not rule that out as a potential source of stick structures. You have people that go into the woods and do bushcrafting. You have people that go into the woods and go hunting, and they will make debris huts and other kind of, they'll make blinds out of natural material to blend in, try to get their Bambi carcass, or in my case, birds for early Thanksgiving dinner, or pheasant or grouse under glass kind of thing. You know, and you just have neighborhood kids going out in the woods and building a fucking fort. We did that as a kid. And, you know, these things are like, there's snow load is yet another reason. I mean, there's 1,000,001 reasons why a tree can come down and be a stick structure that people desperately, in some cases, hang to Bigfoot as an explanation. And it's the least likely one, which makes it sloppy logic. And that was the basis of my defense. And yet the person was offended by that to the point where I had to be singled out for the thumbs down. It was a civil enough debate, but still, the point is, the person was offended enough they had to chime in and, that's what they are. Like, based on what? Where's your theory? What's your defense? People get pissy when you ask, what is the basis of your proof on this? They don't have any. It's an opinion. Well, great. Enjoy your delusion, because that's what it is. And there are others out there like me that are going to start calling it out more, because it's in the way of finding the truth in this. If that pisses you off, well, we'll have to work that out. If you're an adult, you're an adult. We'll agree to disagree. This woman and I essentially agreed to disagree, which is sometimes a rarity in this, because the other guy, the last time this happened with the tree peaker guy, far as I know, he either thoroughly blocked me and banned me from his group due to conflicting beliefs that violate the sanctity of his echo chamber. You know, God forbid science get in the way of a good fantasy and all, but he either did that or he took down the entire group because he had it open to the public, and part of that public may not agree with you. So, good luck with that. but he didn't want to hear. Yeah, he got all grumpy, like, why are you here if you're like, you have a public group? And frankly, when he started his group, like a gnarly ass tree, it's almost like nature's version of bonsai, in a way. A couple of stretches of forest out here, we have old rickety gnarly trees like this that are kind of like the very essence of the New Englandy folklore tales, like Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman and shit. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to throw flaming pumpkins at me right now. I don't need him or the Green Goblin taking me to task for having unpopular opinions relating to Bigfoot. But, at least in this case, the lady was able to agree to disagree, because that is the mature way to handle things like this. But there's literally no proof backing up a stick structure theory at this point. And that's my peeve with it, is basically it's becoming accepted mainstream canon, and yet it's as woo as anything else. And there are pardon my French, but there's a shit ton of people out there that just accept it as, well, one person out there said so, so surely it's not. People can be wrong. People can be mistaken. 99% of all Bigfoot related things that I'm speaking from my own experience. Other people may have a different experience. But in the 171 or 172 Bigfoot reports where I've interviewed witnesses, 90% of the sincere sounding ones were not somebody sure of what they saw. They wanted closure, they wanted understanding. That's why they were reaching out to find out in the first place. They wanted to discuss the matter and run it by somebody, but they weren't sure, they weren't convinced, and that is a more healthy attitude. The attitude that you don't know and you want to try to figure it out is healthy. The ones that are selling a story and a narrative are obviously the suspect ones that are trying to. But the thing is, there's a lot of people in the community now doing that, Wes Germer, that are trying to sell a narrative, and that is their shtick, and people buy into it, and that poisons the subject. I mean, yes, I was harping about this 10 years ago, but it hasn't changed. It's gotten worse. More gnarly trees for you, if you don't mind. And that is where the grievance with stick structures is where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to have this be my outro and my continuing opposition to nonsensical logic in this subject as I pursue the truth of it one way or the other. If you are open to that kind of a partaking of the subject, then like, subscribe, make suggestions. Otherwise, if you want to deride me for not being pro-woo, so be it. I will say that your opinion is duly noted. But otherwise, we'll catch you next time, and that's going to be about it for this time. It's a quiet woods day out here. As we get into spring, you're seeing more of the mushroom stuff like that from a forestry standpoint. And the infrasonic project will start moving forward in the next few weeks once I gather enough materials to have a working little base camp kit to operate with. And hopefully we'll get some results from that. In the meantime, we'll catch you next time, and thanks for listening. Bye.